Imagine a man yelling in the comments that all believers are dumb sheep, blindly following their shepherd. He splutters, throws quotes, and sincerely considers himself the crown of evolution and free thinking. Now look at it carefully. Don't you notice anything? He stands in the herd himself, just the same shoulder to shoulder, just the same obediently. It's just that his herd is a different color. Here's a question that's guaranteed to blow your brain and burn a couple hundred nerve cells in the comments today. What is the difference between a militant atheist and a religious fanatic? If you remove the external tinsel, if you forget about the debate about the beard in heaven, what will remain in the dry residue? No offense, without unnecessary snot, just in fact. Spoiler alert, they don't just look alike, they are identical. And right now, I'm going to prove it to you on my fingers. Why do people who are most proud of their iron rationality, logic, and absolute free thinking behave exactly like those they despise in real life? Why are their methods, their aggression, and their blind conviction copied from the medieval Inquisition? I'll make a reservation right away. This video is not an argument about whether there's a God or not. If you want to talk about it separately, write in the comments. This is a conversation about a much scarier thing, about human psychology, about how our primitive brain builds its identity through a stupid, bestial formula of confrontation, about why the fierce being against something, imperceptibly for the person himself, becomes his new unconscious religion. If atheism, as it is written in dictionaries, is simply lack of faith in God, then why are rigid cults being built around it with such gusto? Their sacred texts appear, prophets are erected on a pedestal, and a hunt for heretics is announced. Where does this thirst for blood come from? We'll figure it out now. If you ask a typical internet atheist how the world works, he will give you a beautiful, well-groomed version. It goes like this. We atheists simply follow strict logic, facts, and evidence-based science. We do not believe in fairy tales and invisible pink unicorns because there's no verifiable evidence for this. This is the position of an adult, an intellectually mature person who has freed himself from medieval superstitions. And believers in this coordinate system are such weak, infantile people who vitally need mental support. They need a fictional meaning of life. They need to somehow drown out the existential fear of death and explain why thunder is rumbling. In other words, atheism is the highest stage of evolution of thought, the triumph of pure reason. That's what they tell us on every corner. That's what the vast majority of atheists themselves think, stroking their ego. Very convenient, pretentious, and beautiful picture. It's just a pity that it's completely false and incomplete. Because the main problem is not whether you believe in God or not. The essence is hidden in something else. How do you believe it or not? Scientists, psychologists, and sociologists have been fixing one extremely inconvenient fact for decades. Atheism itself does not protect a person from dogmatism and stupidity. Numerous studies show that so-called militant atheists exhibit exactly the same behavior as religious fundamentalists at the level of neurobiology and cognitive patterns. One-on-one, pathological intolerance to any dissent, a wild, animal need to flock with those who share their views, and blind, uncontrollable aggression towards outsiders. In psychology, this is called the dogmatic type of thinking. And this mindset has no religious filter. The brain doesn't even care which idea to defend with foam at the mouth. Dogmatism is just a structure that looks for any suitable container. You can feed it a Bible, or you can feed it a physics textbook. The brain will digest it the same way and give out the fanatic. So the question is not whether you believe it or not. The question is, how much are you willing to destroy anyone who doesn't agree with your holy rightness? Let's rewind to 1954. Psychologist Muzaffar Sharif conducts his legendary experiment in a cave camp. Let me remind you the essence. He took absolutely ordinary, mentally healthy 12-year-old boys from prosperous families, brought them to the camp, and simply divided them into two random groups. He gave the groups names, eagles and rattlesnakes. All No racial strife, no different religions, no political ideology. But after a few days, these children sincerely, to the point of bloody fights, hated each other. They raided, destroyed other people's barracks, and considered the neighboring group to be subhuman. Why? Simply because the evolutionary marker has worked. There is us, and there is them. This is how our primitive onboard computer works. It panically searches for a group for survival, marks everyone else as an existential threat, and then protects its own at all costs. Religion is not necessary for this mechanism at all. The brain handles itself. And atheism has become just such a group for millions of modern people, not just a philosophical conviction, but a rigid identity. And a person never discusses his identity rationally. He protects her like an animal protects its territory. And when a belief turns into an identity, logic shuts down. Pure, wild faith begins. Don't you believe it? Let's look at the story that unfolded right on our land, the Soviet Union. Official, absolute state atheism. We were told, ideology is scientific materialism. No gods, no priestly superstitions. And what did they do next? They physically demolished churches, banned religion, shot and exiled priests, and on the site of the destroyed temples, right there in the same second, they built a new church, the cult of Lenin. Incorruptible sacred relics were made from the body of the leader in the mausoleum, where millions of people stood in endless queues for pilgrimage, just like in Mecca or Jerusalem. Instead of icons, there were portraits of the Politburo in each classroom. Instead of the Bible, there were sacred texts of Marxism-Leninism, for the slightest doubt in which you were awaited by a real, bloody inquisition in the basements of the KGB. It was a full-fledged, totalitarian religion just without the word God. And when a Soviet citizen went to kneel at the mausoleum, he did the same thing at the level of brain biochemistry that the Crusaders did. But at the same time, he proudly declared, "I'm not a religious person. I believe in science." Do you think that's in the past? Look around you. Log into any Twitter thread, Reddit, or popular science video comments today. There is exactly the same unconscious worship going on there, only without the censor. It has its own untouchable apostles and prophets, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris. Try to politely, with facts in hand, criticize their theses in the relevant community. You will not be bombarded with scientific arguments. You will be confused with shit, cursed and banned. Because the herd always responds to the criticism of the prophets with aggression. There are heretics there. For example, agnostics who were despised for not hating the church radically enough. Or moderate atheists who call for dialogue. They have their own rituals, the regular, formulaic ridiculing of other people's values for the sake of their pack. And there is its own indisputable progressive morality, a step to the left of which is mental punishment and a culture of abolition. This is not a scientific discussion. This is classic religious fanaticism, which simply changed into genes and sat down to the keyboard. Now let's dig even deeper. The movement of New Atheism, led by the same Dawkins, took off in the West for a reason. This happened in the early 2000s, exactly after the September 11th attacks. Exactly when the Western geopolitical machine needed a powerful, understandable, and legal image of the enemy to justify wars in the Middle East. A random coincidence? Well, of course. Just look at the financial statements. The Dawkins Foundation for Reason and Science immediately began receiving huge grants from major liberal donors. The books of the New Atheists were promoted through the largest media holdings, which were sunk for a certain geopolitical agenda. I'm not saying that this is a secret conspiracy of reptilians. I'm saying the simplest thing. Any ideology that can rally millions of people against a common wrong enemy is an ideal control tool. Religion has been great at this for thousands of years. Atheism has matured and knows how to do it many times faster and more efficiently. Now, let's take a step back, get out of this narrow topic, and look at our whole crazy world.
This terrible mechanism works wherever any global idea appears that claims to be the only true explanation of how everyone should live. Marxism, radical feminism, ultra-conservatism, transhumanism, even veganism. Yes, damn it, veganism, with its saints, sinners, public penance, and excommunication from shaking hands. Absolutely any movement begins as a harmless set of sound ideas, but as soon as it reaches a critical mass, it turns into an identity, and then, inevitably, into a harsh, ruthless religion. Because our brains haven't changed at all since the days of the cave camp, it is still vital for him to find his flock, point the finger at the enemy, and get a ready-made, chewed meaning of life.
And here's what's really scary. The more a movement is convinced of its absolute, scientific, and rational nature, the less capable it is of self-criticism. Any doubt from within is immediately declared treason and heresy. The French Revolution, with its official cult of reason, sent people to the guillotine in batches simply because they seemed not reasonable enough. Maoist China destroyed millions of lives for the sake of atheistic materialism. Religion without God is the most dangerous thing on the planet because, unlike classical beliefs, she has no concept of supreme mercy, compassion, or forgiveness at a deep level. She has only one thing, her punishing, blind rightness. God has nothing to do with it at all. This is the most important thought that you need to realize. Religiosity is not about having or not having faith in the supernatural. Religiosity is a basic defect in the architecture of our psyche. This is how a person defends himself from the frightening uncertainty of the world, how he hides in a group, and how aggressively he reacts to those who think differently. An ardent fundamentalist with a cross around his neck and a militant atheist with a Dawkins book are two mental twins. They have exactly the same psychological trauma and the same need for security. It's just that one packed his fear of chaos into a religious dogma and the other into quotation marks around the word God. Genuine, adult rationality does not consist in shouting, "There is no God." Genuine rationality is the painful ability to doubt your own rightness every second, including the absolute rightness of his atheism. A true skeptic is someone who treats his own skepticism with skepticism. But there are few people on the planet. There are almost none among believers or atheists, because thinking critically is painful, long, and lonely. And belonging to a herd is warm, safe, and fun. And the need to belong always, 100% of the time, wins over reason. It's not about what you believe or don't believe. The point is, are you ready to honestly admit right now that you might be wrong? This is the only, rarest, and genuine freedom of the spirit, and she is equally rare on both sides of God.